The history of Belarus starts with the migration and expansion of the Slavic people through Eastern Europe between the 6th and the 8th centuries. Eastern Slavs settled on the territory of modern-day Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. The first main thing about Belarus is the Kievan Rus, which between the 9th and 12th centuries, the Principality of Polotsk, now in northern Belarus, emerged as the dominant center of power in the Belarusian territory. The city's cathedral of the Holy Wisdom, though completely rebuilt, still remains the symbol of this independent mindedness. In the 13th century, the fragile unity of the Kievan Rus disintegrated due to nomadic incursions from Asia, which climaxed with the Mongol sacking of Kiev in 1240, leaving a geopolitical vacuum in the region. The Eastern Slavs had splintered into a number of independent and competing principalities. Due to military conquests and dynastic marriages, the western principalities of Rus and modern Belarus were acquired by the expanding Grand Duchy of Lithuania. From the 13th to 15th centuries, the principalities were either conquered or willingly joined the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. This period of political breakdown and reorganization also saw the rise of written local vernaculars in place of the literary and liturgical Church Slavonic language, a further stage in the evolving differentiation between the Belarusian, Russian, and Ukrainian languages. The Union of Lublin in 1569 led to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth to become an influential player in European politics and the largest multinational state in the entirety of Europe. While present-day Ukraine and Pulaski became subjects of the Polish crown, present-day Belarusian territories were still regarded as part of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. Of the territory of present-day Belarus, Mogilev was the largest urban center, followed by Vitebsk, Polotsk, Pinsk, Sludzsk, and Brest, whose population exceeded 10,000. In addition, Vilnius, the capital of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, also had a significant Ruthenian population. Eventually, by 1795, Poland was partitioned by its neighbors, thus a new period of Belarusian history began, with all its lands annexed by the Russian Empire. Belarusians were active in the guerrilla movement against Napoleon's occupation. With Napoleon's defeat, Belarus again became a part of Imperial Russia. On February 21, 1918, Minsk was captured by German troops. World War I was a short period which Belarusian culture started to flourish. German administration allowed schools with Belarusian language, previously banned in Russia. A number of Belarusian schools were created until 1919 when they were banned again by the Polish military administration. At the end of World War I, when Belarus was still occupied by Germans, according to the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, the short-lived People's Republic of Belarus was pronounced on March 25, 1918, as part of the German Mitteleuropa Plan. On December 10, 1918, Soviet troops occupied Minsk. The Rada Council of the People's Republic of Belarus went into exile, first to Kaunas, then to Berlin, and finally to Prague. On January 2, 1919, the Soviet Socialist Republic of Belarusia was declared. On February 17, 1919, it was disbanded. Part of it was included into the Russian SFSR, and part was joined to the Lithuanian SSR to form the LBSSR, the Lithuanian Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic, informally known as Litvel, whose capital was Vilnius. When the Soviet Union invaded Poland in September 17, 1939, along with Germany, Western Belarus, which is part of Poland, is included in the BSSR. After 20 months of Soviet rule, Nazi Germany and its allies invaded the Soviet Union on June 22, 1941. Soviet authorities immediately evacuated about 20% of the population of Belarus, killed thousands of prisoners, and destroyed all the food supplies. The country suffered particularly heavily during the fighting and the German occupation. Minsk was captured by the Germans on June 28, 1941. Following bloody encirclement battles, all of the present-day Belarus territory was occupied by the Germans by the end of August 1941. After the end of war in 1945, Belarus became one of the founding members of the United Nations organization. Joining Belarus was the Soviet Union itself and another republic, Ukraine. In exchange for Belarus and Ukraine joining the UN, the United States had the right to seek 2 more votes, a right that has never been exercised. The Belarusian economy was completely devastated by the events of the war. Most of the industry, including whole production plants, were removed either to Russia or Germany. Industrial production of Belarus in 1945 amounted for less than 20% of its pre-war size. Most of the factories evacuated to Russia, with several spectacular exceptions, were not returned to Belarus after 1945. During the immediate post-war period, the Soviet Union first rebuilt and then expanded the BSSR's economy, with control always exerted exclusively from Moscow. During this time, Belarus became a major center of manufacturing in the western region of the USSR. On April 26, 1986, the Chernobyl disaster occurred at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine, situated close to the border with Belarus. It is regarded as the worst nuclear accident in the history of nuclear power. It produced a plume of radioactive debris that drifted over parts of the Western Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, and Scandinavia. Large areas of Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia were contaminated, resulting in the evacuation and resettlement of roughly 200,000 people. About 60% of the radioactive fallout landed in Belarus. The effects of the Chernobyl accident in Belarus were dramatic. About 50,000 kilometers squared, or about a quarter of the territory of Belarus, formerly populated by 2.2 million people, or a fifth of the Belarusian population, now require permanent radioactive monitoring. On July 27, 1990, Belarus declared its national sovereignty, a key step towards independence from the Soviet Union. On August 25, 1991, after the failure of the August coup in Moscow, Belarus declared full independence from the USSR by granting the Declaration of State Sovereignty a constitutional status that it did not have before. Then, after independence, Belarus got a dictator, thus being the only remaining dictatorship in Europe. The final thing about Belarus is that Belarus allowed its territory to be used by Putin's army in the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine to stage and launch forces from the north into Ukraine. And that is it for the history of Belarus. Now, time for some stats. The Belarusian land area is about 207,000 square kilometers, one of the biggest countries in the entirety of Europe. The population of Belarus is 9.2 million, on the higher end of countries in Europe. The GDP, the gross domestic product of Belarus, is about 73 billion, on the low end of Europe. And finally, its GDP per capita is 7.8 thousand US dollars, on the lower side of Europe. So that is it for the history of Belarus. Hope you enjoyed. This is my longest one by far.